So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the session 2, which is the spectrum policy and COVID-19, adapting to keep societies connected. My name is István Bozsóki, and you can see that I'm from the ITU. I'm the head of the Telecommunication Networks and Spectrum Management Division in the BDT. The COVID-19 pandemic has transformed all aspects of life, including radio spectrum policy. Governments, regulators, and industry representatives have all been adapting and innovating in order to meet the challenge of keeping citizens connected during a time of unprecedented demand for connectivity and broadband access. This session will look at some of the measures that have been taken, at how countries across the CIS and Europe region beyond have departed from their standard spectrum policies to deliver the capacity to keep citizens, societies, and business connected. During this session, we have three panelists, or this fire chat. We have Dr. Peter Vári. He is the Deputy Director General, the National Media and Info Communication Authority of Hungary, and he's the Spectrum Management Director there. Vadim Poskakukin, who is Project Manager, the Spectrum Management LLC, currently is working with the LTE Union. And Sviatoslav Gormash, Spectrum Engineer, Eutelsat. I will ask for each speakers to have a 6.5 minutes introduction about their experiences, and then we will have some questions. So let's start, Dr. Peter Vári. Peter, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much for István. And my name is Peter Vári, and I work at the National Media and Information Authority in Hungary. And I would like to give a brief overview of the Hungarian ICT sector and impact of the virus period. Before the impact of the COVID, I should mention the two programs. In 2018, the government has announced the broadband internet project, and all townships must be connected to an optical network. The other program was launched by my authority. The authority needs to provide all spectrum for mobile broadband. In 2014, the spectrum was sold on the basis of the mixed method to mobile operators. They undertook to build the 4G network in 5 years in settlements where there is no any broadband internet connection. We hadn't heard of the COVID at that time. Mobile operators built these broadband networks. In 2019, we started a 5G auction like other countries in Europe. And I would like to share some pictures about it. Please, the next one. Yes, please. We planned our process in 2019, and when we planned it, we haven't the COVID. And after we launched the official process, the COVID arrived to Europe. It was a big question for us, continue or not continue this auction. We continued. Our authority has a lot of measurement car, but on the next picture you can see a little bit different car, which had a very important role during in this day of auction. You can see here the special car, which is not belongs to the information authority. This car is a mobile laboratory, and staff of this car have to execute the fast test of the COVID. Everyone could enter to the auction room. The next slide, please. Next picture, please. Everyone could enter the auction room only after the test. Under this circumstance, we successfully completed the auction. We set the frequencies to the operators based on the technology neutral. We defined in our documentation, in that case, the operators will use these bands for 5G. The authority will decrease the frequency usage fee. Operators undertake the launch the 5G. Our authority has specified in the documentation more precisely the verticals where it expects to build the 5G network, such as medical, education, transport, agriculture, tourism. So let's see the impact of the COVID on ICT sector. Above all, we had to move into the digital world in a forced situation. Everybody escaped the home office, and our children used the remote education, for example. Based on the recent survey, we expected the greater positive impact on the use of the internet-based service. Let's see the usage of the mobile internet in a few sentences. As a result of the COVID, there weren't more subscribers, and only 6% switched to the bigger data package. E-commerce, 1 or 2% increase in the number of the internet users who shop online from national or international shops. Those who have used it before, they have used it more intensively in this time. E-government, 65% of the internet users use it in our country. The number of users increased by 10%. Online banking, currently 70% of the internet users use it. The virus increased users by 2%. Utility service, electricity, gas, water, 57% of the internet users use it. The virus increases users by 2%. The personal purchasing and administration are still important for our country, for our inhabitants. Yes, the COVID has an impact in the residential segment, but it's not significant. It was a short overview about the situation, what we see in this time, in this year in our country. And István, I give the floor yours.
Thank you, Peter. I can tell you that it was very quick, even shorter than you had time. So the next speaker is Vadim Poskakukin, and project manager of the Spectrum Management LLC. So Vadim, what are your experiences?
Vadim, sorry to say you're still on mute, I'm afraid.
My apologies. Thank you, István, and I will be switching to Russian for my introductory remarks. Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Спасибо большое организаторам за возможность принять участие в таком интересном формате беседы на такую животрепещущую тему, как последствия COVID-19 для нашей отрасли, для спектрум менеджмента. Мы в нашей компании наблюдали, проводили мониторинг того, как пандемия и меры, принимаемые для борьбы с ней, влияли на сектор ИКТ, и хотелось поделиться некоторыми наблюдениями. В целом, влияние пандемии на сектор ИКТ можно условно разделить на три составляющие. Это влияние на конкретных пользователей, на операторов связи и на экономику в целом, ну или, как модно сейчас говорить, на цифровую экономику. Так практически все жители планеты почувствовали на себе влияние пандемии и были затронуты ограничительными мерами. И как раз доступ в интернет и сервисы на основе сети интернет позволили смягчить последствия данных ограничительных мер и сохранить некоторую активность в экономике. Причем в большинстве стран мира основным механизмом выхода в интернет стали сети сотовой связи. И даже в российских городах с высоким проникновением проводного интернета сети сотовой связи также активно использовались, так как для работы видеоконференц-связи отдельно для дистанционной работы, для родителей, для дистанционной работы, дистанционного образования детей требовались надежные каналы, и очень часто даже проводная связь не справлялась, и сотовая связь приходила на помощь. По этой причине можно сказать, что те страны, которые своевременно предоставили спектр для сетей 4G, создали условия для инвестиций в сети 4G и также создали экосистему сервисов в различных сферах жизни человека, жители этих стран были более в комфортных условиях, несмотря на все сложности. Если говорить о сотовых операторах, для них пандемия также, не только для сотовых, вообще для всех операторов связи, пандемия стала вызовом, несмотря на некоторый запрос прочности. Так в России в весенние месяцы трафик в проводных сетях вырос на десятки процентов, а в сотовой связи рост трафика доходил до 50%. И более того, для сотовых операторов потребовалось передислоцировать емкость с центра города, где были офисы, в спальные районы, куда переместились многие сотрудники, и трафик резко возрос. Это тоже был достаточно вызов для того, чтобы с этим справиться. Ну и, наверное, самым показательным применением, которое показало слабые и сильные стороны работы операторов, было дистанционное образование, так как дети учатся везде, и практически везде был переход к дистанционному образованию. И, соответственно, были выявлены проблемы с покрытием сетей сотовой связи в сельской местности. И как раз тут можно провести параллели со спектром. В частности, в Российской Федерации достаточно сложная ситуация с нижними полосами частот, диапазона 800 и 900 МГц, ограниченное в развертывании широкополосных сетей из-за системы воздушной радионавигации. Диапазон 700 МГц все еще обсуждается с целью его высвобождения для подвижной связи. Ну и как раз несмотря на то, что в России действуют программы по строительству оптоволоконных сетей в малонаселенные районы, вот как раз последняя миля и проблемы с нижними диапазонами частот выявили сложности с обеспечением покрытия в сельской местности. Ну, надеемся, что вот ситуация, которая была, все-таки в будущем можно будет исправить и решить вопрос частотного обеспечения. Ну и, наконец, переходя к экономике в целом, наш такой анализ показал, что предприятия, которые заранее вложились в автоматизацию, в цифровизацию цепочек поставок, оказались более подготовлены к кризису, к ограничительным мерам. Многие предприятия смогли гораздо быстрее вернуться к производственной деятельности и нарастить производство после снятия ограничительных мер. Некоторые даже могли не прекращать работу с учетом того, что они могли сохранить производственную деятельность с меньшим персоналом за счет автоматизации. Таких примеров очень много в Азии, есть в Европе, в нашем регионе меньше, но тем не менее это тенденция, которую заметили многие правительства, и, например, Китай, Южная Корея, Объединенные Арабские Эмираты, Япония, уже Евросоюз рассматривает именно использование ИКТ в качестве меры для восстановления экономики, для повышения ее устойчивости. И практически во всех программах и планах фигурируют технологии ИКТ, такие как искусственный интеллект, цифровые двойники, интернет вещей. И практически во всех этих программах упоминаются сети 5G в качестве базовой основы и технологии, которая объединяет и ускоряет внедрение данных технологий в реальный сектор экономики. И в этом отношении вопросы спектра и частотного обеспечения спектра 5G перестают быть чисто телекоммуникационным вопросом, а фактически становятся вопросом восстановления экономики и конкурентоспособности экономики в будущем. Поэтому, соответственно, именно пандемия подчеркнула этот аспект. Ну, на этом я бы, наверное, хотел закончить свою вводную часть и готов присоединиться к дискуссии. Спасибо.
And now we switch to the third speaker, Seattle.
Thank you, Istvan. I will also switch to Russian for my introduction. Я рад представлять Евтелсат на этой сессии. Спасибо большое организаторам за возможность дискуссии. Евтелсат является частью спутникового сектора и разделяет общие тенденции во время текущего кризиса. В первую очередь, конечно, это значительно возросший спрос на широкополосный спутниковый интернет для конечных пользователей и возросшее потребление трафика в связи с широким распространением удаленной работы и дистанционного обучения. Евтелсат предоставляет услуги в этом сегменте как через собственный бренд Connect, так и через партнеров. В России услуги под брендом Connect предоставляются с помощью спутника Евтелсат 36T. Так, для безлимитных тарифов в 2020 году мы отметили максимальный рост месячного потребляемого трафика за апрель-май 2020 года плюс 135%. Количество абонентов в 2020 году увеличилось на 60% с максимальным приростом в апреле около 9%. Для общего сравнения я могу привести пример с африканского континента, а именно Демократической Республики Конго, где у нас большая абонентская база. Для периода с апреля по май рост потребления составил 70%. Потребление трафика. В области спутникового телевидения можно отметить увеличение среднего времени просмотра телевидения, в том числе линейного, а также значительно возросший интерес к дистанционным обучающим программам. Надо понимать, что спутниковые операторы не могут, скажем, в течение нескольких месяцев запустить дополнительные спутники. для удовлетворения возросшего спроса. Поэтому важным является долгосрочное планирование в развитии спутниковой инфраструктуры. И, конечно, для привлечения инвестиций в такого рода проекты спутниковые индустрии должны иметь соответствующую предсказуемую нормативную среду. Мы сейчас находимся на конференции по управлению спектром. И я надеюсь, что в нашей дискуссии последуют и другие дискуссии о важности принятия решений о спектре на международном, региональном и национальном уровне, которые могут наилучшим образом удовлетворить потребности всего населения региона. Для Eutelsat развитие пользовательского широкополосного спутникового доступа в интернет в КА-диапазоне является значительной частью стратегии уже длительное время. В 2011 году было начато оказание услуг со спутника высокой пропускной способности КАСАТ, а в прошлом месяце стал готов к оказанию услуг, заказанный еще в 2015 году спутник Eutelsat Connect. Его пропускная способность для Европы составит 42 гигабита. А в следующем году планируется запуск спутника со сверхвысокой пропускной способностью Eutelsat Connect HTS для оказания услуг в европейском регионе, включая страны Восточной Европы. Его пропускная способность составит 500 гигабит, а полезная нагрузка будет работать в КА и QV диапазонах и позволит предоставлять интернет для конечных пользователей на скорости до 200 мегабит в секунду. Еще одним подтверждением востребованности и конкурентоспособности такого рода услуг является то, что практически вся емкость на спутниках Connect и Connect HTS на территории Италии и Франции была зарезервирована Телеком Италии и Orange, соответственно, для оказания услуг в местностях, где другие виды связи недоступны или экономически невыгодны. В целом можно сделать вывод, что спутниковая индустрия успешно адаптировалась и еще раз доказала свою важную роль в уменьшении цифрового неравенства, особенности при возможных кризисах. Но самое главное – это то, что тот ответ, который отрасль может предоставить сегодня, основан на тех решениях, которые были приняты заранее. На этом моя презентация закончена. Спасибо.
Спасибо, Святослав. I just was waiting for finishing the interpretation. So now we have time for questions. For the audience, if you have any questions, please put it into the chat, and then we will reply. At least we will try to reply the questions. But I have also some questions to the panelists. The first question to all of you, that in a broader sense, what ICT, radio technologies, and spectrum for such technologies could not only to help in the current situation, but also for the recovery of economy after the COVID-19 pandemic. And I have a linked question also this, that what was learned about the best ways to put underutilized spectrum to use in times of crisis, and the potential opportunities to rearrange access to it. So maybe I'm changing now the order. Vadim, maybe if you can start.
Sure, thank you, István, for the question. As I already told, and developed countries with already industrial companies applying current modern technologies, including based on spectrum and wireless technologies for the production, they already seen some benefits in resilience. But if we talk about our region, I think in case of slowing down economy with some recession and not significant financial funding available, I think still wireless technologies such as Internet of Things, different types of application of machine learning could be used for cost efficiency. So in case there is no economic growth, or significant economic growth, the only way to actually to recover is to become more cost efficient, to become more sustainable. And many of the technologies and application based on 5G and other wireless technologies actually focused on efficiency. It could be in water consumption, power consumption. We have a lot of application already in Russia for agriculture, when there's so much inefficiencies in a traditional agriculture process that when you apply current modern ICT technologies, not just, and again, it's not about communication, it's about application and software for that, but it works with wireless technologies. You can increase significantly the production and reduce the cost. And I think in this regard, countries in our region could speed up the introduction of these technologies to become more efficient, and in this regard, to be able to get back to sustainable production and a normal life of people. I think that's the main idea. Thank you.
Thanks. And Sviatoslav, do you want to add something on this?
Yeah, thank you. I could add that in satellite communication, actually, I don't think there is a really underutilized spectrum. But if we will see how technology is developing, is that we are trying to use the spectrum more and more efficient way. Talking about broadband connectivity, the cost of satellite infrastructure was decreased by order of 100 in 10 years. So it's impressive numbers. And but another way maybe to use spectrum more efficient is to develop new satellite technologies, which is also the case.
Thank you, Sviatoslav. Before I go to Peter, Sviatoslav, I have a question to you. And even it's very close to you, this question, because it's from Dmitry Korzun. And he's asking that how many subscribers are currently connected to Eutelsat in the CIS Russia, if you know the average connection speed and who are the main customers. If you can quickly reply this, if you have some information about this.
So, well, as I said, we are providing services in Russia. If you're talking about internet connectivity, it's the brand Eutelsat Connect. So under Connect brand, it's my understanding it's still developing, but for the number of customers, it's in order, I think, several tens of thousands.
Okay, but maybe what we can do that maybe.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah, so maybe if you can provide maybe more details to Dmitry later, and maybe I'm sure that he will be happy. Peter, now to you the same question what we had before.
Yes, thank you. I absolutely agree with the development and the some stuff that the ICT sector can increase after the pandemic situation, because new technology it's help to the other part of the economy. When I mentioned that our authority defined the some with the verticals, agriculture and education, for example, we realized it in this time it could be useful for these segments, because everybody tried to move to home and work at home, and in this way necessary very good the ICT sector, ICT connection, and the wideband broadband connection to these homes, of course. And the first time we afraid of that, maybe our network can use because maybe they overloaded this network, and we gave some tips to the users how it can decrease the capacity of the internet usage in this time. Like, for example, use instead of HD, the SD format, if we use the internet connection. And I think our infrastructure is can work properly and we can help to others. And I see how the shape this pandemic time to the other segment of the economy. For example, we have the bigger company who is established a call center in our country, and there is 600 employee works there. And due to the pandemic situation, everybody went home and work at home, and they later realized, okay, why we can rent the big office for these people, and what we can do after the pandemic situation. I believe that the normal methods and some normal business process will reshaped after the pandemic situation, and I'm sure that our sector, the ICT sector, can help to this reshaping process to the others in the agriculture's education, for example. And on the other hand, I absolutely agree with Vadim that the radio communication is very, very important, including the satellites and mobile broadband connection, but only the spectrum is not enough for this, the successful the services necessary to do the additional things, the softwares and other solutions to help to the economy, to help the people in this next time, in next period. Thank you, István.
Thank you, Peter. And I have a question, but before maybe Vadim can still speak a little bit about the rearrangements after the COVID, and also if you can reply a question related to SCADA. So, Vadim, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, István. Yes, I've just forgot to respond on the second part of the question about the rearrangement. At least our experience is that whatever actions which have been done with spectrum by some administrations, most of those cases have been prepared in advance before pandemic, at least. And there had been no time and resources during the most difficult months of the crisis to rearrange something. So it's mostly was a homework, and it just reiterates the importance that with spectrum you need, and with everything basically, you need to prepare in advance. So it's a very good proverb that victory loves preparation, but I think efficient spectrum management is also loves preparation a lot. And that's why it's very important that after those most difficult months, regulators started to work hard actually to improve the situation. And in regard the question which we have received on the SCADA application in Russia, I think that it's an automation software used in the production. I think most of the industrial companies are already using such software practically everywhere. And I think the main question now is how to evolve it to the next step of a management system of production, of automation, how to introduce more sensors, how to introduce more advanced machine learning algorithms inside production. And this, I think, the main, and actually implement full, if not full automation, but much higher level automation of the production with more efficient technologies. And I think SCADA is a good starting point, but everyone are now thinking about how evolve it to the next level using the most up-to-date technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Vadim. Now I have a question to Sviatoslav, but I think maybe Peter can join later. That which response you expect from regulators to support satellite industry and allow them to better respond to the crisis?
Thank you for the question. So I think, as Vadim said, the best way to be ready to respond is to prepare in advance. So for the satellite industry, I think the important thing is the stable regulatory environment. So we could develop and invest in new infrastructure and in increasing efficiency in utilizing spectrum. Also, I think important to admit the need for diversity of types of communications. So they are all different, but I think it's very important to leave the possibility to them to coexist. And I think it's especially important during such pandemic. Maybe when considering some potential development plans or something, the regulators could be more neutral, so they could allow different technologies to compete for usage, or it should be foreseen that different technologies will exist. Maybe to say in another word, not to put all eggs in one basket.
Thank you, Peter. Do you want to add something or propose something?
Yes. From our regulatory side, in this time, we prepared our spectrum strategy for 5 years, and it's the satellite communication is more important in the future, as we see, and we try to have to this service and try to have would like to launch the satellite service in our country, and we see the coordination in this field is very important, and we try to have this process for these operators. And of course, we participate in the different the satellite organization, and we try to have the international work, like the Intersputnik, for example, or the UTESat or the others, and we absolutely participate how we can work together, the administration, because it's important, in special at the satellite services. And after we accepted the spectrum strategy, if somebody interested what we can see for the next 5 years, we can publish in our website, of course, in not Russian, but the English language will be available, this strategy for everyone.
Thank you, Peter. Now a little bit back to Vadim and Peter. So as it was mentioned even by Vadim during the presentation, the 5G networks and spectrum will have greater role in digital transformation of various industries to be more sustainable in post-COVID era. What is your view on spectrum for verticals? Maybe Vadim?
Thank you, Istvan. So it strongly depends on the country situation, maybe on spectrum availability, and also on the maturity of industrial companies. In cases when the spectrum is not abundant, or there is sometimes lack of spectrum for 5G deployment, especially in mid-band, at least my company believe that the spectrum for MNOs should be prioritized, and even not if it's in the case of scarcity, up to the case that dedicated spectrum for verticals could be postponed. And we already see that it's not a big problem which cannot be solved for verticals in this case. We see that such technologies as network slicing, dedicated cores, and spectrum subleasing could be an answer in such situations for the verticals. And we already in Russia, with LTE, with 4G, already have examples of dedicated cores installed or special services provided for industrial applications and for different verticals based by operators. And one important thing, even in case of dedicated spectrum would be available, in many cases, operation of those networks, the rollout of this network is more cost efficient done by MNOs. So basically, verticals are asking operators to help them to roll out and then to operate, because cost efficiency, operational expenses are very important for everyone. In other countries, especially where there is a lot, not a lot, but still spectrum not so limited, and they have very strong industries like Germany, for example. Maybe in these cases, it's more practical to have some dedicated spectrum. But again, I think this issue of verticals is better to address in the higher bands or some applications, because in many countries, especially in Russia, we have a very difficult situation with mid-band, and it's even more difficult in lower bands. So basically, we haven't addressed the need of MNOs and the general public yet before going for the verticals. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Peter, what is your opinion as regulator?
Yes, I agree with the Vadim. Before the 5G auction, it was very big debate and very interesting that how can use the spectrum for the future. For example, the car manufacturers try to apply for the part of the spectrum because they would like to develop something autonomous car, for example. And when we ask them to tell the concrete things, so why we like to use the spectrum for, and what kind of technical background, let's say, for this test, and we hadn't received any exact answer from the manufacturers. And we, on the other hand, we understood the situation that they would like to use the benefit of the 5G, of course, but it's not belongs to directly the spectrum. And when we planned our auction, we tried to encourage the mobile network operators to work together, the other market players from the agriculture field or from the car manufacturers, for example. And yes, we have some technical solution how we can share the 5G, the network with the others, the network slicing, for example, or the secondary use of the spectrum in the exactly place of the manufacturers inside the manufacturer, for example. And I see some example in our country, especially in the university and the vendors, the telco vendors, work together and work together with the mobile operators. And for example, El Capital, the test launched in the last month. And when we prepared this auction, before it, I went to some place and visit how they would like to launch the 5G in our country. And before the COVID, I went to the football stadium, and at that time I saw that what kind of the media service will be available for the people who can see the different football match at that time. And unfortunately, the COVID reorganized our life, and the technical background moved to the hospitals, for example. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was the first test when the X-ray picture went through the 5G, the network. And in this way, the mobile labor, which you can see in our picture, the similar car, can use the mobile X-ray equipment together with the 5G. Of course, it's not available in our country everywhere, but in the future, I can imagine that the similar equipment will equip the ambulance car, for example. Very slowly try to find the service which is interesting for the different sectors, like the car manufacturers and the medical companies, for example. We try to encourage that they work together and try to solve the real problem, and then try to give the real solution to this question.
Thanks, Peter. I received a very interesting question, so maybe this will be the last because we have still 5 minutes. There is a question from Ukraine, Oleg Oryakov, that in your opinion, which communication is more promising, satellite or IMT? I'm not sure whether it's a question of or, but I don't know, that maybe Sviatoslav, you can start, and maybe Vadim, you can add.
So I think our answer is that we should not choose between them. Both types of communications should coexist. It's our position, and for example, as I mentioned in France and Italy, we recently sold full capacity of our new satellites for broadband communications. So two telecom operators, two fixed and terrestrial telecom operators. So I think the coexistence is important, diversity is important, and to add more satellite communication is also facing evolution. It's not the same satellite communication which was 5 years ago. We are developing new technologies, new types of services, and for example, our new VHTS satellite will provide a connectivity with a speed up to 200 megabits for end users. So I think it's also quite impressive.
Okay. Thank you. Vadim?
Thank you. I will first paraphrase Russian poetry that все технологии важны, все технологии нужны. So all technologies are important and needed. But I think that if you look at the side of the market, the capacities, yes, IMT probably the largest by consumption and by the financial size. So this is why it drives, and it's basically more people are interacting with IMT even when it's backhauled by satellite. People thinking that they're using IMT, but they still also use satellite. But I think that traditional satellite communication, maybe except like new non-GSO systems with very high capacity, low latency, are not very promising. But what is more important is actually satellite communication for mobile platforms. And it's important for IMT as well. So basically, it's very difficult to connect the train from the outside, from the base station. It's sometimes difficult to connect a ship in the sea or in the river. So basically, there is an opportunities for backhauling IMT base station with satellite on moving platforms. And I think this will be, and also new non-GSO systems with capacity could be used for backhauling some rural sites in many cases. So I think technologies could complement, but you always need to think about the size of the population and the issues each technology will address. And then you need to combine it in a proper balance. So both technology will receive attention enough to complement each other. Thank you.
Peter, if you are very quick,
I would like, yes, would like to.
Why 5G is a top prioritized subject in European Union and Hungary? It's from Turhan Muluk from Intel.
Yes, I try to transfer to Turan. The 5G is, I think, the present, especially in the east part of the world, the Asian countries. And I think the European Union and European countries try to keep this competition with the other continents. And we would like to use the 5G technology. Also, we like to develop this technology. And why important for our country, our Hungary? Maybe you haven't known that the Hungarian mobile operators operators are the top in the 10 operators in the worldwide, because we have the very good mobile network in our country, and we would like to keep this position in the future also, and we would like to develop the 5G service in our country also in this time.
Thank you, Peter. Sorry, but we just reached the end So I heard already the noise that we have to finish. So thank you very much for your contributions. And it was a very interesting discussion. And I'm sure that 45 minutes is not enough to discuss all the subjects. But thank you very much for your help. Even we had no time to discuss the education questions during the COVID. So thank you very much. Thanks for the participants and back to the organizers.
Thank you.
Thank you to Istvan, and thank you to all of our panelists. So a fascinating way to kick off our first panel at the event. So thank you all very much, and I'm glad we got around to answering some of those questions there, which is great. If there are any questions that weren't answered, then we'll try and forward those on to our panelists so they can maybe come back to you directly for that. But a great way to start the session, or a great way to start the event, I should say, with our opening keynotes this morning, and then of course with that panel focusing on COVID-19 and the response to COVID-19. So we've now got a short break. So we've got about a 45-minute or so break. And then we're going to be back here on the main stage at 12:30 in Moscow time. It's local Moscow time. So back here in 45 minutes for our next session, which is going to be covering some of the issues which Mario has already raised in his keynote presentation this morning. So looking back at WRC 19 and also looking forward to WRC 23 as well. So that's coming up next here on the main stage in 45 minutes. So we do have a very short break now, or not very short, we have a 45-minute break, I should say. But please do try and make use of the networking part of the platform during that break. So if you use the menu on the left-hand side of your screen, you can navigate to the networking area. And if you click on ready there, as I demonstrated earlier in the video, you can then link up with other people who are on the platform. So please do take advantage of that during the break, and then make sure you're back here in 45 minutes for our next session. So once again, thank you to Istvan and to our panelists for that session. Thank you to our keynote speakers, and thank you to all our viewers out there for your comments and questions. And we look forward to seeing you back here in 45 minutes. Thank you.